Hey guys, it's Byron here and welcome to Byron's Reviews. So today I thought we'd film outside for a change because it's good weather here in the UK, and if you know anything about living in the UK, it's that we don't get good weather very often, so I thought I'd make the most of it. And today we will be taking a look at my first impressions on the filmmaker Neil Johnson, referring to his films Starship Rising and Starship Apocalypse from 2014, as well as another film he directed and wrote, Alien Dawn from 2012. But first, a disclaimer. These aren't going to be full reviews as such of the aforementioned films. They're just going to be my first impressions on them and the director as a whole. And there are two main reasons for this. Reason number one is that 3 reviews in 1 week is kind of a lot. And reason number two, while I have seen Starship Rising and Starship Apocalypse both twice, I don't think I have a full understanding of them yet, as I'll get onto later, they are very complicated. Opinions are still moving around in my head and I'm still not entirely sure on what I think, and also I just want to see more of Neil Johnson's work and more of what he has to offer. So as a result, this video is just my first impressions. That said, let's get this video rolling. And I don't think I'm going to wear these for the full video. Firstly, let's go over some general information about Neil Johnson, which is actually surprisingly interesting. Initially born in England, Johnson moved to Australia at a very young age, and by 20, he was the youngest paid director in the country. On top of this, according to various sources online, his film Demons in My Head, later changed to Nephilim, is the world's first digital film, which, if that's true, I think it's utterly crazy. And as such, Neil Johnson has been heralded as a pioneer in both digital and low-budget filmmaking, as can be seen with his film To Become One, later changed to Bipolar Armageddon, which had a budget of only $2,196. And that's pretty amazing. Whilst known for making many sci-fi films, which by the way are all linked together in the same universe, Johnson is also well known for making music videos. In fact, he has made over 500 of them for very famous bands such as Manowar, U2 and Rhapsody of Fire. So I think it's fair to say that he has had a very eventful and fulfilling career, but now let's go over my impressions of him. One of the first things to strike me about Neil Johnson's films was the covers. They look beautiful with gorgeous blue colour palettes and lots of planets and spaceships in the background. They ooze the sci-fi genre so heavily, and this mostly goes for Starship Apocalypse and Starship Rising. And on these films, like most artwork and promotional material nowadays, the live-action characters that feature in the films are very prominent on these covers, but Alien Dawn is kind of different in that regard. It's an amazingly detailed piece of artwork that looks like it has been created and drawn from scratch. In fact, the other day I was at college during a free period doing research for this video on a computer, and I was sat next to my friend Becca, and she pointed at the screen at the Alien Dawn poster and said, "Hey, that's cool," and I think that says it all. And the best thing about these covers and posters is that in terms of how the films themselves look, the posters don't lie one bit. Once again, I'm mostly referring to Starship Rising and Starship Apocalypse in this section, but with those films, each shot, pretty much without exception, looks so fantastic, and they could make posters in and of themselves. The shots inside spaceships look really cool, with lots of grey pipes all around the sets, and really cool looking white lights. Then there are some really cool looking aerial shots of planets and cities, made of CGI of course, but they look great. On top of this, there are frequently some really awesome looking holographic panels which show up quite a lot, and this is aided by really awesome costumes, especially with these aliens in Starship Apocalypse known as the Masters. The prop guns are pretty cool looking and futuristic too. The sheer amount of special effects and CGI in these films are amazing, and according to IMDb, Starship Rising had a budget of only $3 million, which I can't believe Neil Johnson and his crew got this much use out of it. These films are very special effects driven though, so it's a good thing they have this quality of CGI. They seem very high budget, and it's not really what you'd expect from a low budget B movie like this. However, when watching Starship Rising with my dad, he did comment that the CGI didn't have any charm that he would expect from a B movie, and that kind of matches my criticism of Mythica that I did last week. But I don't agree with him here. I think that the film's style, balance being obviously and distinctly sci-fi, but also having a bit more of a gritty tone than most sci-fi films. Putting aside all the positive comments on the look and style of these films, I am slightly more skeptical about the writing of Starship Rising and Starship Apocalypse. The films follow two empires at war in a futuristic outer space setting, when an uprising takes place against both of these empires. The plots are very political and include many elements that you could, if you chose to do this, relate to modern day governments and society. But honestly, I'm not going to go into too much depth with this, as I think that could spawn completely different discussions. Anyway, the reason I'm a bit more skeptical on the writing of these films is because the stories are very complicated and convoluted. And I'm gonna be honest, the first time watching Starship Rising, I really struggled to follow what was going on. On one side, these films do spend time explaining what's going on in the story, such as from the regular narration from the protagonist John Worthy. But on the other side, so much information is thrown at you that I personally really struggled to keep track of what was going on and remember everything. I was frequently asking myself, okay, which side is this character on again, and things like that. And the film really doesn't offer a helping hand with this, and you have to put in a lot of effort to watch the film yourself, as oftentimes I felt like if I missed one line of dialogue, it'd hinder my enjoyment and understanding of anything that happened after that point. All of this makes me think that director and writer Neil Johnson was so determined to create such a vivid and detailed sci-fi universe that he just was cramming so much in terms of the story and the world, and so much detail that it did hinder the film. And while I'd say he did create this universe, many other elements weren't expanded upon. To help explain this, for every seemingly insignificant detail, such as telling us about the setting of an empire's finance sector, another character's motivations aren't fully fleshed out. For example, when one character commits mutiny against an empire known as the Federation, another character called Torgus was just dragged into all of this, and he just went along with the character who was rebelling, and I never really got why. However, Starship Apocalypse does improve things over the first film in this department, but in a lot of times that's only because it has to re-emphasise some of the things that weren't fully explained in Starship Rising. These plots also aren't helped by how the scenes are ordered. There are many scenes that are only a few seconds in length, and as a result they never really grabbed my attention or seemed to have a solid beginning, middle and end, and as such they just kind of went past me. I didn't really know what was going on. And many of these scenes were spliced in between many other bigger scenes, I think to create an illusion of a fast pace or that something more interesting was happening when it wasn't really. Maybe I am being a bit too negative though, as when I saw these films again, I started to understand these things a bit more and somewhat get into it. The protagonist John Worthy did have an interesting backstory that influenced him throughout the film, and as a result his journey was somewhat interesting. And another character, Torgus, that I talked about earlier, while his motivations weren't maybe that good, he did provide some quite funny comic relief. On top of this, I have to say that the acting in these two films was of a very high quality, and that also helped to drive the film. And amongst all these criticisms I mentioned earlier about convoluted stories, I don't think those criticisms are inherently a bad thing. Why is this? I think it's because for a certain kind of audience, I can imagine this complexity actually being quite enjoyable. It's not my taste, and I don't think it will be most other people's tastes either, but I do think an audience is out there for it. What I mean by this is that for those who want a really in-depth and detailed sci-fi universe to really sink their teeth into and get a lot out of, it'll probably appeal to them. But that's if they know it's not exactly going to be easy watching, because it really isn't. The reason it's not really my cup of tea though is because with B-movies, which I'd say these films do fall under the category of, I do tend to like simplicity. Just something that is simple escapism, and I guess that's one of the reasons I talk about films being generic or cliche a lot in my videos, and why they really don't matter if they are. But as for Alien Dawn, that other Neil Johnson film, this falls under the category of B-movies I much prefer. Alien Dawn is effectively a huge love letter to War of the Worlds, even down to the enemies being huge tripods, and there are even some references to the red weed, and if you're familiar with War of the Worlds, you'll know what I'm talking about. As you'd expect, the film follows a group of humans trying to survive in an apocalyptic and post-alien invasion world. The plot is much simpler than the other films I just talked about, but as a result, I think the characters were able to be a lot more complex and understandable. They were pretty relatable too, and from my experience, less complex stories do tend to allow for more interesting characters. The characters in Alien Dawn do make a lot of irrational decisions, and I can imagine a lot of people watching this and thinking, why would they do this? You can do it this other thing instead. And to that I say, what would you do if you were in that situation? It's an alien invasion. I think you'd be a bit stressed out too and do some stupid things. And these characters really are the embodiment of the human spirit, doing whatever it takes to survive in dire circumstances. So due to this, Alien Dawn is much more up my alley, and it's just easier escapism in my eyes, and that's the kind of thing I like. Maybe it's because I'm a bit lazy, but hey, it's entertainment at the end of the day. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And like Starship Rising and Starship Apocalypse, in terms of the film's production values, such as with its style and set design, Alien Dawn is probably just as good. Now let's conclude my first impressions on Neil Johnson. All in all, whether you like this filmmaker or not, I think it's hard to deny that Neil Johnson is a very talented filmmaker who has a seemingly unlimited passion for what he does. I may not be in love with his films from what I've seen of them so far, but I am definitely intrigued, to the extent that I'd say they're some of the most interesting films I've seen in a while, and I do want to see more of him, and I'll probably will. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was requested by the YouTuber Bobby Lapaya, who also has a YouTube channel as well as a really cool website, which I'll link both of in the description. Like me, he does B-movie reviews and reviews of other films as well, so check him out, he has some really interesting opinions. That said, request month is now over. It's been really fun to do from my perspective, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want me to do it again, that's definitely a possibility, so do let me know. Or if you want me to do other themed months in the future, let me know that as well, because I have some ideas floating around in my head, but if you have any ideas of themed months I could do, please let me know. But until next time, I will see you later. Bye. Summer. It's me again. I just want to quickly say apologies for not including any screenshots from the films I talked about in this video. I just struggled to fit it in. But that aside, I hope you guys are having a great day. You rock. Referring to his films Starship Rising and Starship Apocalypse. Oh, I got them the wrong way round. Bloody hell.